Cavafy, in a way, wrote two kinds of poem. One sort of poem is about historical Alexandria, the Ptolemies and everything which he knew from history. And the other poems are about modern Alexandria, life which he knew in modern Alexandria. And they're mostly love poems, and I suppose because I know more about love than I do about history, I chose to do those. I'm planning a book of 12 etchings, but I might do more. I don't know. It might be 18, it might be 20, but at least 12. And I'm hoping to then print an edition of 500 copies of a book. Just an ordinary picture book. It's just got some pictures in it and some very beautiful poems. On these etchings, I really worked from three sources. Drawings, which I did, photographs, which I bought and or took, and 2 or 3 were drawn directly from life onto the plates. I quite like drawing from photographs, really. I'm just wiping dust off the wax there. That plate's just covered in wax and smoked, so it's dark. And you simply scratch through it with a needle that doesn't have to be very sharp. It really just glides over the plate. You can see little bits of wax. Really, it just peels off. You don't actually dig into the metal. There's no need to do that. When you put it in the acid just eats where you've drawn a line. Simple process, really. Now here this is the acid. I'm just putting in some potassium chlorate. I'm not sure why you put it in, but it speeds up the acid when you put in the plate. It bites quicker. If you didn't put in the potassium chlorate for some reason, it takes quite a while for the acid to warm up and get active. And if you just dissolve it in hot water and pour it in, it'll seem to work quick. It's just an ordinary acid bath. I have to have it out on the balcony because there's awful fumes come off it when you put in the plate. I suppose it's some deadly fume. And so I just close the window to keep them out and let them blow away into Powys Terrace. This is a drawing that I did in Beirut, in actual fact. It's part of the seafront in Beirut. And I'm just simply redrawing the drawing onto the plate. So when it's printed, of course, it'll look the reverse. I didn't bother reversing the drawing. I had to occasionally in some things. If there is lettering, Arabic lettering, I had to hold the drawing up to a mirror and then do it, then redraw it, because of course I don't know anything about Arabic letters, but I thought I ought to get it right. It's rather nice drawing with this thing, because you never seem to have to stop. I mean, you could draw a continuous line because the thing itself has no ink on it or medium of any kind. You can just draw away, really, without having to take it off the plate. Gives a rather kind of beautiful line, I think, in a way. It's why you can get a nice line in etching. This plate, in actual fact, is a portrait of Cavafy, and it's made up of, in a way, two sections. One section is, the background is a drawing, as I say, that I made in Beirut, and Cavafy is done from a photograph which I had given. And I just wanted a picture of Cavafy in Alexandria, and so I thought I'd just do a portrait and build it up this way. Well, here I'm just, this is the plate before it's going to go in the acid, and of course the front is covered with wax and has now been scratched upon, and the back is still, of course, the virgin copper, and so you've got to protect it, otherwise it would just be eaten away, and you just coat it with some varnish. I think it's called straw hat varnish, that you can wipe off with turpentine when you take it out of the acid. Just protects sections of the plate that you don't want the acid to get anywhere near. And the wax also protects it, of course, on the front. In America you can get plates that have got plastic backing, so you never have to do this. Better kind of, you know, it speeds up etching, really. And then you simply put it in the acid. The acid really isn't very strong. I mean, you can put your hands in it. It wouldn't eat your finger away immediately you put it in. If the acid is too strong, it can eat too much, and you've really got to watch them very carefully. They have to be in the acid about 1 hour to produce a solid black. And so if they're in half an hour, they produce a grey. And this plate here, you see, it's just, at the moment, a light grey. I keep just tickling the plates there in the acid. In a way, it's not, I found out it's really not necessary with copper. These are the first etchings I've ever done on copper. Previously, I always used zinc, and you need a slightly different kind of acid with zinc, and you have to keep watching the plate continually, really, because little bubbles occur as the acid is eating into it, and if you don't remove the bubbles with a feather or something, the line would just be dotty. You just get a dot instead of an even line. Well, in copper, it appears somehow this just doesn't happen. Although that's an aquatint there, you see. This plate has got, already it's got a line drawing on it, and then I've put on the aquatint, which is just the resin dust. I'm just blocking out bits. See, it's already been in the acid, so all that section you see that's bare is already a light grey, and I'm painting on it with varnish, and so of course the sections I am painting will stay light grey because I'm protecting. The acid cannot penetrate the varnish. What I leave and then put back in the acid bites deeper and it gets darker and darker. And if all the time it was in the acid added up to about an hour, it really would be black. But I don't want anything particularly black. I just like a dark grey pattern. This is a kind of blanket on a bed that's got a pattern on it. And I'm just using I'm going to use 3 different greys, which will mean blocking out 3 times and putting it in the acid 3 separate times. There are many prints that are just aquatint and nothing else. There's no other process used at all. I think Goya did plates that were just aquatint, really had no line on at all. This is just, you know, when you take the plate out of the acid, of course you've just got to wash it with water, so I have to shove it under the shower, because if you didn't, there's bits of acid still on it, which will merrily go on eating it, you see. And once it's been bitten, you see, once the plate has been in the acid, to produce a reasonable line, it's got to be in for 3 hours to produce a thick line. Well, if it's only in for 2 hours, the line is thinner. And so if you want to use thin and thick lines, you've simply got to draw, first of all, the lines that you want thick and put it in the acid, which is what I did here. I've then taken it out of the acid after 1.5 hours, and am then carrying on drawing with other lines which I want to be thin. This is a Venetian blind behind 2 figures getting into bed. And the lines on the Venetian blind will be a lot thinner than the figures, because they've only been etched for 1.5 hours as opposed to the 3 hours of the other lines. With these etchings, in a way they're all planned out. I've got a reasonably clear idea of what they will look like. I've planned them. I decided in a way on the style. I mean, I've drawn them, I think, in an ordinary way, an ordinary, realistic drawing, which is what I wanted, I think. In a way, that's what the poems demand. And that's all I'll do. I'll, of course, keep the style throughout. Well, this is just wiping off the plate's just come out of the acid, and I'm just wiping the back first, just the varnish. It just wipes off pretty easily with the turpentine. And that was the last bit, you see, of the aquatint remaining there, which should be eventually a dark grey. It will print dark grey. And then you have to, when you've wiped off all this varnish and wax, you can just polish it with a metal polish, Duraglit or something or other, to stop the, you know, terps or anything just discolouring the metal, which might print slightly. It's better if you keep it clean straight away. And also, the Duraglit puts a little bit of, just a tiny bit of dirt in the line, and then polishes the metal so you can see the line in a way quite clearly before it goes off to the printers. It's very smooth, the metal, because you can see it's shiny, and all the shiny bits will just, of course, print white when the ink's eventually put on them. I bought those pants, by the way, in the Jack Frost surplus store in Santa Monica. Once I really get going on a plate, once I've started on one plate, I like to finish it as quick as possible and see a proof of it. I don't know why, really. I mean, I never rush paintings. Not that I rush etchings, I suppose it's just that I know I can do an etching in 2-3 days. And the point is, when, with this acid here, and this awful smell you get, the fumes really did, you know, they creep everywhere. And couldn't sleep so well because of these awful fumes, so I had to keep getting up early and keep working on them. It's very good, really. And then I whip them off to the printers. I can't print etchings, really. Well, not very good. It's much better to have somebody, a professional printer, take a proof. This is the printing process. Even though I've polished the plate, they then re-clean it with some stuff. I don't know what it is. Some benzene, I think, or something like that. But it cleans every bit of dirt off the plate, and especially out of the lines, because of course you need the lines clean now, because they're going to hold the ink. And if they were full of dirt, they wouldn't hold enough ink, and you'd get a rather rotten print. And you rub on the ink. You smother the plate with ink. Then simply remove it by wiping over it, and the ink stays in the lines that have been dug into the metal. And finally you kind of polish it with your hands, moving your hands fast over the plate, and you remove the last bit of ink on the virgin copper. A lot of people have, I suppose, you know. People who etch a lot, I suppose, have lots of equipment and things that looks complicated. And a lot of people make out it's really very complicated and difficult, but I think really it must be one of the simplest methods. I think it's simpler really than lithography, in a way. See, if you don't wipe it a lot, the whole thing would print slightly grey, and I really don't want it grey. I want black lines on white paper. And to do that, you've got to just clean the plate pretty thoroughly. As I said, I really don't print them. I'm just kind of finishing off wiping this plate here, because I thought it wasn't clean enough. And you just put the plate in the press. The press, an etching press, is just these two great big rollers. You need really enormous pressure, because the rollers press the paper into the lines to collect the ink. You just run it through, and there's a print. With that aqua tint we were putting on, you can, well, here you can only see kind of, there certainly looks two different greys there. And I've just to check them over, because sometimes if they weren't inked well enough, they sometimes leave a line. If the ink hadn't filled the line, occasionally they miss. And I think because these etchings are primarily line etchings, it's very important that they should be printed very well. The line should always stand out well. See, there's the portrait with the lines. The first print was it was slightly faint. The thin lines that I'd drawn on the Venetian blind hadn't quite come out really. And on the first print, if they don't come out, you're never sure whether in actual fact it's just the printing that wasn't too good, or whether the lines in themselves are actually too thin. So I'm really just suggesting we take another 2 or 3 prints right now just to find out. I mean, the moment you've got one good print, you know it's possible to print 100 others exactly the same. But until you get a good print, there's always the possibility that it's just the plate, there's something wrong. The line itself just isn't deep enough, and it won't take the ink and hold the ink. He came out of the office where he worked in a position that was insignificant and underpaid, about £8 a month including tips. When he had finished with the odious chores over which he had stooped all the afternoon, he went outside at 7, walking slowly, idling away his time in the street, handsome and interesting, the way he seemed to have achieved his full potential sensuality. His 29th birthday was last month. He idled away his time in the street and in the poor alleys leading to his home. Passing in front of a small shop which sold some fake cheap goods for working people, he saw within a face, a figure, and this urged him to enter, as if to ask about some coloured handkerchiefs. He inquired after the quality of the handkerchiefs and what they cost, in a low voice almost stifled by desire, and the answers that came followed suit, abstracted in a choking voice, implying willingness. They kept on murmuring things about the goods, but their sole intent to touch each other's hands across the handkerchiefs, to bring their faces close together, and their lips, as if by chance, a momentary contact of their limbs, quickly and stealthily, so that the owner of the shop, sitting at the far end, should not notice. In the dull village where he works, as a clerk in a shop, very young, and where he waits for 2 or 3 more months to go by, another 2 or 3 more months till business slows down, to go then to the town and throw himself immediately into its life and entertainment. In the dull village where he waits, he went to bed lovesick tonight, his whole youth afire with fleshy passion. His lovely youth, lovely in intensity, and pleasure came to him in sleep. He sees and has the body he desires in his sleep. I care about my writing, love it. Just now, though, I'm discouraged at my slowness. The day depresses me, seems, ever to get darker, darker. The wind blows, all the time it rains. Now I'd rather look than write at this picture of a boy reclined beside a fountain, tired from running. How beautiful he is, what a divine noon enraptured him to lull him so to sleep. I sit and gaze like this for a long time, so from art's toil I rest again in art.